Breaking news out of North Carolina. 4 high-ranking officials in Mark Robinson's gubernatorial campaign have resigned, according to a release from staffers. This comes days after CNN published decade-old online posts where Robinson calls himself a, quote, black Nazi and a, quote, perv. Robinson denies he made those posts. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance is refusing to denounce Robinson or call on him to drop out.
I know that allegations aren't necessarily reality, and what I'd say is it's ultimately up to Mark Robinson in North Carolina whether he's going to be their governor and whether he wants to stay in the race. I'll let them make that decision.
Joining me now, Michael Steele, former RNC chairman and co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend, and Steve Phillips, host of the Democracy in Color podcast and author of the book, How We Win the Civil War, Securing a Multiracial Democracy and Ending White Supremacy for Good. Gentlemen, welcome to the Sunday show. Mr. Chairman, your reaction to news that 4 staffers from Mark Robinson's gubernatorial campaign have called it quits.
Well, yeah, and I suspect there may be more. I mean, if you've got top campaign officials, look, these guys want life after that campaign, particularly if they are anchored in North Carolina, in the state of North Carolina or in that region. They don't want the stain of that campaign on their resume. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What is more troubling and certainly not surprising is the response from J.D. Vance and the response from Donald Trump. This is right up their alley. They're not men enough to call out someone of this particular character, someone who is clearly identified himself to be unfit for office. He called himself a Nazi and a perv. I don't know what else you require to say, okay, you know what, I think we'll pass.
Right.
But they can't do it.
I mean, Michael and Steve, let me play Senator Lindsey Graham on Meet the Press today, talking about Mark Robinson being unfit if the allegations are true.
The charges are beyond unnerving. If they're true, he's unfit to serve for office. If they're not true, he has the best lawsuit in the history of the country for libel. I don't think this hurts Trump, but as to Robinson, he's a political zombie if he does not offer a defense to this that's credible.
Steve, do you agree with Senator Graham that that this scandal won't hurt Trump?
Well, it won't, in that, and we've seen all along that, as he said back in 2015, he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and wouldn't lose any support. It's not about his qualifications or his, moral fitness or anything. Donald Trump is the champion of the notion that this should fundamentally be a white country. And as long as he upholds that standard, he will always, as Cornell was talking before, he was never going to fall below 44% of the people in this country, because we remain in this existential fight around the nature of the country. And all these other issues are kind of noise to a certain extent. And that's why you see the polls only moving a little bit.
Chairman Steele, what do you think?
No, I agree with that completely, John. I think that is the absolute correct analysis of this moment. And this moment is not what we're talking about right now. This moment is the period 2015 to the present day and ongoing. This has been something that has been brewing within our country since the 1930s, certainly within the Republican Party, and it's been an existential battle within the party at various times to deal with this issue, to repulse this issue, to embrace this issue. So we're right now in a period where we're embracing, and I think that says a lot of why J.D. Vance, who is pretty much whatever you want me to be today, I'll be, because tomorrow I know something else, and that's fitting for this Republican Party. And so someone like Mark Robinson fits right in that scenario. And what makes it even sweeter, what is the best little cherry on the top you can put on, is he's a black man who's playing the white game in this space. And that's another reason why you don't hear a whole lot of white politicians running out there condemning him, because it works the narrative.
Ooh. So then, Michael and Steve, the next question is, if this doesn't hurt Donald Trump, then does it put North Carolina in play? And I bring that up because Steve has a piece in The Nation headline. Could Harris take Florida and North Carolina? The data suggests she can, with the subhead, if Harris's support among black voters continues to consolidate as it has over the past 2 months, then she stands a very strong chance of winning both states. And I want to point out, we have this, yes, the full screen there. This gets to what Maria Teresa was talking about in the last block. While much of the mainstream media has recognized that the full 2020 set of states are currently competitive, what most still don't see is that Harris's candidacy has brought back into play not just the 2020 states, but also the 2012 states. The level of excitement and energy among voters of color now make nearly all of the states won by Obama newly winnable by Democrats. Come on, Steve.
100%. 100%. Is that what we were talking about before, right? That the country is fundamentally divided. Now, fortunately, that divide is slightly larger for those who want this to be a multiracial democracy, but it's a very large minority who would prefer that this be a primarily white country. And that plays itself out in all the states across the country, all of the states won by Obama in 2008, 2012, and the country has gotten significantly more diverse since then. And that's what Maria Teresa was talking about, the numbers of new registrations, the number of people participating. The problem in places like Florida and North Carolina has been a drop in enthusiasm and a drop in turnout. The numbers have always been there population-wise, but we haven't had the participation that Obama had that enabled him to win. The enthusiasm behind Harris is bringing that entire coalition into play, and that coalition is bigger now than it was in 2012.
And one other thing you point out in Florida and North Carolina is that her share of the white support is better now than President Obama's exit polls in those states in 2008 and 2012.
Yes, so her current polling is better than what Obama got when he won. And that's a little bit of what some of the earlier guests were talking about as well, too, is that there's some small percentage of the white Republicans, but this is just too much for. In that, so you're seeing that there's some erosion, which is meaningful in a state as closely contested as North Carolina and Florida.
And Chairman Steele, before we go to break, what do you make of Steve's argument?
I agree with Steve's argument. In fact, when Joe Biden handed this opportunity to the vice president, when the shift occurred, I was on our air saying that at the end of the day, this election for the Democrats could be bigger than Obama. That what Kamala Harris had the potential to do then, which is now being borne out and certainly reflected in what Steve just said, is she could create a different coalition, one that was more than just a combination of Obama and Biden, meaning 08 and 20, but even adding in new elements, because what has happened transformationally in terms of issues is Dobbs. Abortion is now in play. What that does is it draws in center-right voters who would otherwise be aligned with the Republican Party, now falling away because of the heavy-handed nature in which Republicans want to control women's bodies and take away their rights, and that does not sit well either. So this coalition that's being created right now by Kamala Harris and Tim Walz is not just one to watch, but it's going to be one that the history books will study when I think she takes this thing to victory. Florida and North Carolina will fall, along with Georgia. So there you are.
Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, you are on record, Chairman Steele.